Parliament is used to boiling debates, incendiary oratory, and bitter ideologically charged battles, but what occurred this week went way beyond business as usual. It was not another party position confrontation or photo op, it was an explosion, an overflow of years of tension, irritation, and distrust. And in the middle of it all stood John Steenhuisen, the Democratic Alliance leader and a man now on a quest to take on what he freely refers to as the authoritarian drift of President Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency. The chamber was already charged when Steenhuisen took the podium. Everyone looked for the next knocky critique, maybe some familiar jabs at the ANC, but what they received instead was a moment that went viral nationwide. Steenhuisen held his ground, his voice ringing out over the din with a ferocity that stilled even the most fidgety benches. He launched a scathing denunciation of the president, labeling him not merely incompetent, not merely weak, but a danger to democracy itself. With words that pounded like hammer blows, he announced, "You have betrayed the Constitution." The chamber froze for a heartbeat, no one moved, no one whispered, and then, as if on cue, chaos erupted. ANC members hollered in outrage, some thumped their desks in fury, others sprang to procedural complaints hoping to shut him down, but Steenhuisen refused to be deterred. His voice increased in volume, his delivery grew more biting, his message unshakable. Fist clenched on the podium, his eyes firing, he cited the Constitution, the very root of South African democracy. He had charged President Ramaphosa with deliberately undermining that foundation, of concentrating power as no post-apartheid president had ever ventured to do. He boomed, "You have betrayed the Constitution you took an oath to protect. You are no longer a guardian of democracy. You are a threat to it." The phrases echoed through the chamber. Opposition MPs sat forward in stunned interest, some nodding aggressively in support, while the ANC benches thundered back in outrage. The speaker tried to interrupt, but Steenhuisen would not give way. This was not political theater, it was a call to arms. Steenhuisen took it a step further, accusing the Ramaphosa government of crossing the most perilous line, one dividing democratic leadership from autocratic rule. He referenced what he termed as proof of state espionage on opposition members, creeping censorship of free media, and the weaponization of state organs to silence and intimidate critics. "We are not a nation of subjects," he stated, his voice shaking with rage but honed with purpose. "We are a nation of citizens and we will not be governed by fear, by secrecy, or by a man who talks of transparency and functions in the shadows." The outcry only grew. ANC MPs yelled back, their tempers flaring, but Steenhuisen's words were already resonating outside of Parliament. Videos of the incident filled social media within hours, in living rooms, taxis, and offices nationwide. South Africans argued if it was the work of a hot-headed opposition leader or the call of a patriot shouting in warning. Later in the session, President Ramaphosa reacted. He did not shout. He did not reflect the blaze of his opponent. Rather, he used measured, no-nonsense words spoken with a clenched jaw that could be seen. He flatly dismissed the accusations as reckless, inflammatory, and threatening to the nation's unity. He maintained that his administration had always behaved within the parameters of law and that placing fear on the agenda for political purposes was beneath Parliament's dignity. Leadership, he asserted, is not about demolishing institutions with lies, it is about establishing trust through accountability. But sharp-eyed witnesses in the room saw something else, a flash, a brief hesitation in Ramaphosa's equanimity. It occurred when Steenhuisen accused him personally of masterminding what he described as a democratic facade, a government that appears open and accountable but secretly exercises authoritarian zeal. The president seemed cornered for the first time in years. The confrontation is a watershed in South African politics. For months, the DA leader had attacked government failures in the delivery of service, corruption, and stagnation in the economy, but this time it was different. No longer was it a matter of policy or budget, this was a charge that struck at the very heart of South Africa's democratic experiment. Steenhuisen, in making that speech, put himself not only as head of the opposition but as a guardian of the constitution. It was a big risk. If he can substantiate his allegations, he might be able to spark a national movement calling for accountability and transparency. If he cannot, he will be dismissed as irresponsible, his credibility undermined at a time he hoped to raise it. People close to his party describe this as more than just hot air. They say Steenhuisen is working on releasing a thorough report unearthing what he describes as executive overreach and manipulation of the independent institutions. The report, insiders say, will contain classified emails, whistleblower accounts, and documentation of backdoor deals that, if true, would rock the foundations of the ruling party. Legal analysts are already making guesses at the possible constitutional implications. Parliament might be compelled to have unprecedented discussions on presidential accountability, impeachment procedures, and the extent of executive power if the allegations are found to be true. At the same time, the ANC is not sitting on its laurels. Rumors indicate that the governing party is drafting a formal complaint against Steenhuisen on charges of inciting unrest and denigrating the president in parliament. Should such a complaint go forward, it has the potential to ignite a protracted battle of procedure that keeps the country's eye squarely upon the National Assembly. Aside from the politics, everything is at stake. South Africans, tired of corruption allegations and economic woes, are desperate for leadership that builds trust in the system. For some, Steenhuisen's impassioned speeches were a promise kept, someone boldly articulating the unsaid. For others, it was a reckless gambit, one that threatens to destabilize brittle institutions when the country least needs it. But whether one interprets it as a wild gamble or a wake-up call that is necessary, the impact cannot be denied. Social media is on fire with discussion, opinion columns are flowing forth, and civil society organizations are already demanding independent audits into Steenhuisen's accusations, while the ANC, for the first time in ages, appears shaken. For the moment, Parliament's halls may be still, but the reverberations of this clash will be heard for months, maybe years to come. South Africa is at a fork in the road. Two stories are now openly at war, one of an unfairly tarnished president and the other of a president exposed as a threat to democracy. Will Steenhuisen bring the evidence he threatens? Will Ramaphosa counter with candor or retreat behind more obfuscation? And most critically, how will the South African people perceive this confrontation?